That's insane. Don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. Do you know what happened when I first started my online business and was selling? The first high charge that I ever had was $97, which in my mind back then was super high. Somebody said, you can't charge that. Only lawyers and doctors charge that. The course ended up selling out. Don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. You know what I'm saying? They said to me when I first had my Millions conference in Chicago in January, you can't have it in January. It's gonna be canceled because January, it's gonna snow out. You don't understand. Chicago is the worst in January. They're gonna cancel all the flights. I went to God and I said, God, I believe you told me to have this conference in January in Chicago. I pray for unseasonably warm temperatures. You know, when we heard the news, the newscaster said it hasn't been this warm in over 20 years. Don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared.
So the question is this: how do thought leaders, school dropouts, former and current students find out what's next after they do or don't cross that stage? If you want to know the secrets to starting the career or business of your dreams, getting paid whatever you desire, and discovering what you do the best with the least amount of effort, then this is the right podcast for you. I'm Shawn Anthony, and this is School's Over, Now What? The podcast. Welcome to School's Over, Now What? The podcast, and I'm your host, Shawn Anthony. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today. I know a lot of you, this may be your first time you ever click that button, so I want to make sure you know exactly what this show is about. Each and every single week, we continue to bring you an inspiring person or a message, and everybody that's been on this show has answered one question we have all asked ourselves, and that's school's over. Now what, right? What do we do? Should we go for this career? Should we go for entrepreneurship? Should we start our own business? And I'm excited to tell you this right now. This show has completely blown up and is a top 100 podcast in the business category on iTunes. And it's because it has created and built a strong community of people who have been changed by this show. So for you clicking that button, I want to always make sure our guests and our listeners know before we get anything started, our review of the week. And this week's review of the week comes from The Glow with Chloe. And she wrote, all these years of education, yet no one taught us how to tap into the gifts inside of us. This podcast exposes what school didn't. Thank you. Entitled it Game Changer. The Glow with Chloe, I appreciate you. And right now, if you're listening, if you've enjoyed this show, we're at episode 102. Scroll to the bottom of iTunes. Do me a favor. Click that 5-star rating and leave a review. It has helped us do tremendous things and helped us to continue to elevate this show and give you what you need each and every single Friday. With that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Are you thinking of starting a business? You're going to need a website. Or do you have a business but haven't updated your website in over 2 years? Then you need to hear this. Olive Branch Digital will help you create the website of your dreams. They are masters at turning your ideas to responsive websites that get picked up on Google and all the major search engines. Stop wasting time trying to learn the code and visit olivebranchdigital.com. Mention the podcast and get 10% off your website project. This episode is brought to you by www.patreon.com/schoolsover.nowwhat. For as low as $5, you can help us impact more people, tour schools, and reach communities. You also get exclusive Patreon-only content. That's bonus episodes, early access, and be able to go behind the scenes with me and some of our guests. Visit www.patreon.com/schoolsover.nowwhat and become a patron today. All right, let's get into the reason you click that button. Let's get to this, guys. Today's guest is none other than the Tiphani Montgomery. You have seen her everywhere. She's the founder of Millions Conference. And whenever she speaks, whenever she talks, be sure to pay attention. She's also a best-selling author. And in my opinion, one of the best speakers that is out there right now. You're going to want to really digest this content. We had the privilege of having Tiphani on our recent episode of Coronavirus Now What, when we go live on Instagram at 9 p.m. on Mondays. And it was just crazy. The people, the reviews, the thoughts, the lives changed. It was monumental. You're going to be impacted by this episode. This may possibly be your favorite episode after today. I want to make sure you are fully in lock for this one. Prepare yourself for this one. If you're driving in your car right now, you're going to want to save this one. If you're sitting at home and you have a desk, a countertop, you're going to want to grab the pencil. You're going to want to grab the paper. Get ready to take some serious notes. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 102 with Tiphani Montgomery. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. And I am here with the one and only founder of the Millions Conference. She also, guys, likes to fight bullies. Tiphani Montgomery is on the show today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for this one because I've watched your content. Wife's watched your content, and we are constantly looking at people who are shifting culture, shifting perspective, and you represent all those things.
Yes, thank you.
So I know someone right now is trying to wonder or figure out who's Tiphani. How can I find out who is this person? Take us back, right? I want to know about, that kid growing up. You said from New York, right?
Yes.
So tell us about her.
I think my story is unique as it is normal, if that makes any sense. Because I think that there's like this group of people that are just like me out here in the world, and we just don't know that our stories align. But when I was a little girl, like my life didn't make sense. And what I mean by that is when you ask somebody what they want to be when they grow up, some people say, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a basketball player. I wanted to be an autistic genius because there was a TV show that I watched when I was a little girl. And there was this autistic kid cracking cases for the FBI. And he was a genius. And I was like, that's it. I understand my life. I want autism and I am a genius. And so imagine going through life as an elementary school student and you're like, I'm autistic and I'm a genius. And they're like, you're not autistic. And so because I had figured out that I was already a genius, I went to elementary school and I was like not paying attention to anything. I was staring out the window. I was daydreaming. I was doodling. And my teacher was like, Tiff, you're failing everything. And I was like, I can't be because I'm a genius. And so they took me to the doctor that gave me smart pills, which was like Ritalin. And you know what that is? That's for people with ADHD. And so I gave my Ritalin to my Rottweiler Zeus because he was as hyper as I was, calmed him right down. And I went on to do the work because I wanted to prove to them that I was really a genius and I didn't need smart pills to have any help. But aside from that, like I ended up in high school really by the hair of my chin. And I was failing everything because I learned that traditional education was like not my thing. I couldn't learn the traditional way, but I really was probably a genius. And my principal sat me down and he was like, I cannot let you graduate high school without taking anger management. And so you said that I was somebody that fought bullies. That is absolutely true. But before then, I was trying to put your head through a wall. Do you understand me? Like, I don't want you to be breathing anymore. Die. And so my principal, because I spent half of my career in high school in school suspension. Like I was always getting in trouble. And he was like, Tiff, I just can't let you graduate unless I've done everything I can to make sure that you are a productive citizen in this United States of America. And so while I was really angry at the fact that I had to take anger management class, the irony, right? It was in that class that I learned that writing was cathartic. I learned that writing was therapeutic. I learned how to write. And so through that, I started to write these really angry Black girl journals. And so right after I graduated high school with a 1.7 GPA, like wow. Literally a D average, I ended up pregnant with my daughter as a teenager. And I was like, gosh, I'm knocked up. Like, now what am I going to do? And the only thing that came to mind was writing these books. And so when I told people that I was pregnant and they're like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm going to write these books. They were like, you can't because you have a baby on the way. You should think about being a teacher's aide or a nurse's aide. And I was like, well, that's going to suck because I don't like kids like that to be a teacher's aide. And I don't really want to be around sick people all day and be a nurse's aide. And so I do what anybody does when they're told that their life is over. I moved from Rochester, New York to North Carolina. And so I enrolled into a school because I thought that that's what everybody wanted me to do. And I ended up quitting because I was a freshman for 3 years straight at a college here. And I was like, you know what? Traditional education is not for me, but I'm also failing everything. So what do I need to do next? And so I took really what I had on the inside of me, which was writing all of these books, wrote my first, well, I didn't have to write the first poetry books because I already had them compiled into those Angry Black Girl journals. So I just really kind of used what I had and I didn't look outside of myself for the answer. And I also used my tax refund check to publish my own books. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to bet on myself. Like, I didn't want to borrow the money from anybody else because I'd already felt like a failure being a teen mom. From that, there was a woman that heard about me selling my books everywhere. And when I say I was selling my books in the hood, in the club, like I was selling. And she was like, I heard about you selling these books everywhere. Would you consider writing fiction? And I was like my attention span wouldn't allow me to write fiction, but I was like, if the opportunity presents itself, sure. I wrote my first fiction novel in it was 75,000 words in 3 months. And in the same year, it was an Essence magazine bestseller. And I've been an Essence magazine bestselling author 7 times. And so that's kind of the beginning part of my life.
Yo, that life is lit. So here, you mean to tell me you grew up wanting to put people through walls? Why the anger? Why so much aggression? Someone's listening to this right now who immediately had a flashback of them being younger, just like, young Tiphani. Why do you think you were so angry back then?
So I grew up being physically abused. And what I learned in being physically abused, kind of looking at it now, God brings a lot of people, like a lot of young girls or a lot of guys in my life with a lot of anger issues. And immediately when I see that in somebody, I'm like, okay, somewhere in your life you were being physically abused because you tend to lash out how people are lashing out inside of you. The difference of mine was I wasn't just hitting normal people. I hated bullies because I was being bullied in the house, if you will. And so if I saw somebody out and they couldn't defend themselves and somebody that knew that they couldn't defend themselves were trying to fight them, I was going to fight for you because I hated to see it. And so that is where the anger came from for me, was the fact that I was being physically abused in the home and I just didn't deserve it. And I was very angry because of it. It had set a seed of anger inside of me. But when I gave my life over to God, he really just he crucified that anger on the cross. He didn't take it away, right? But he crucified it on the cross, and I'm able to be angry in different ways with righteous indignation. And so I think he still loves that fire in me. That's still that fight needed to be in me, but it just needed to be redirected and cleaned up a little.
Facts. I mean, that's such a great way to kind of say it too. I think right now someone's listening to this and they're saying, did she say 1.7 GPA?
Yes. I mean, if we're going to be honest, traditional education doesn't really house what we need as entrepreneurs. Traditional education is really great for people that work 9 to 5s. And I am not against people that work 9 to 5s. I think that you are all essential. I think that you're important. And I know some people that work 9 to 5s that love it and never want to do entrepreneurship. So I don't down anybody or talk down about it. But traditional education is literally created for 9 to 5 mindsets. And there is a difference in how we think, entrepreneurs, and how 9 to 5ers think. And so when I think of somebody like me that was born to be a leader, I was a natural born trailblazer, meaning that you can put me in a forest and I don't have to see a path. Give me a machete and I'm cutting my way through. I'm a natural born innovator. My mind thinks outside of the box. I color outside of the lines. I am not like anybody else. Then traditional education is definitely not for me. And it's so funny. I have a 20-year-old daughter. I have a 9-year-old son, and my son is almost identical to me. And it's so funny having a mom that understands him now, that I'm like, listen, I want you to do the work just because I don't want you to fail, but this is not important. Let me teach you what's important. Let me teach you life skills. Let me teach you entrepreneurial skills. And he soaks it all in because he is a true entrepreneur. So I am not an advocate for traditional education. I'm not an advocate for college. Unless you are a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, I want you to get some formal education. But outside of that, it's a waste of time.
Hey, I love it. Listen, we've never had anybody on this show who was just straight to the point and said it like that and broke it down like that. We get people to tiptoe around it, but so the fact that you just went straight on like that, I think it's pretty dope. So someone's listening right now and they have kids, right? We have a lot of people in that 25 to 32-year-old range, and they have young children. What are some of the things you're teaching your 9-year-old son from an entrepreneur standpoint? What are some of those things?
So one of the things, I've been an entrepreneur since 2005, 15 years on paper. I have not worked a 9 to 5. And one of the things that I realized in entrepreneurship is it's really a journey of personal development or spiritual development. What do I mean by that? I mean that, and this is just for adults, I've learned and I've watched over the years, just thousands of entrepreneurs, when you build something and create something and nobody buys what you're selling, you normally, like, let's say you wrote a book and you try to give that book to somebody and they're like, oh my God, like, I don't want the book right now. Thank you, but I'll buy it later. you normally feel rejected. And it's not, they didn't, in your mind, they didn't say they didn't want the book because they don't have the money right now. What in your mind, what they said was, I don't want you. And so you then tend to internalize this rejection and this abandonment because you're broken somewhere on the inside and you've made this book your self-worth. Instead of detaching yourself away from it, saying that this is just a book. It has nothing to do with my self-worth. If the book is a success, I'm still dope. If the book fails, I'm still dope. But the success of the book or the failure of the book has nothing to do with who I am as a person, because whether this thing fails or succeeds, I'm still amazing, right?
Yeah.
So when I look at my son and I look at these beginning stages of what I see adults go through when they become entrepreneurs, and he's selling a $20 bookmark because that's how much his bookmarks are. And somebody looks at him and is like, no, Pop, I'm not buying a $20 bookmark. And he gets angry and he gets mad. I look at him and I say, listen, nobody has to buy your bookmark if they don't want to buy your bookmark, right? You need to figure out a better marketing strategy to sell your bookmark to people who want bookmarks right now. Yep. Maybe you're selling it to somebody who wants an ebook, right? Like this bookmark has nothing to do on your worth as a human being. And so right now I'm really focused on teaching him the development part of it emotionally, mentally, so that when he gets a rejection, he's not internalizing it and he doesn't quit. I want when he hears a rejection that it's a numbers game. So you need to ask 8 more people to get 3 more sales. And so I'm detaching that emotionalism from him.
I think that's important to have so you don't take it so personal, right? People get that absolutely. One no and they stop when they could have had a greater yes, which I think is so important. So as I want to go travel through the cycle here. As you're selling your books, you said you were in the hood selling the books. You're at the club selling the books, right? What gave you that mentality to say, you know what, they gonna get this every way, every form, every fashion?
I mean, imagine growing up, right? Like half my family are Latin kings. So I got Puerto Rican in me, but half of my family are Latin kings. And so imagine just growing up watching people selling drugs all around you, people really getting to this money, like people, not a little bit of money, but they're getting kingpins. And this is all around you. And so I remember when I started selling books, I'm like, it's just no way that I can watch drug dealers get to this bread, you know what I'm saying? And I can't get to it in a legal way. It just didn't make sense to me. And so I think I was afforded the opportunity, to be quite honest with you, to watch people make large sums of money in a very short amount of time. But check this, Shawn, I was also afforded the opportunity to watch them die early and go to jail for it. And so what I learned early on was I didn't want money by any means necessary. And all money wasn't good money, right? Like I didn't want to be the person that was like, I just want money. It doesn't matter what the repercussions. It mattered to me because I can't go to jail. And so I really took that same hustle and I watched people with 9 to 5s. They clocked in at 9. They left out at 5. They went home. But I watched hustlers like not change their clothes for days at a time, get into this money in the streets. And they would celebrate a little bit, but they would pack their money up and go back out. And so I kind of developed that mindset of going out. And so when I say I was in the hood, I mean, I asked somebody, I was like, what's the most dangerous hood in North Carolina? And they told me, and I went and got a table fold out at Target and put out my table at the most dangerous hood. Let me tell you how dangerous it was.
Were you in Durham?
No. I said Raleigh. Okay, I wasn't going to Durham. Yeah. Durham is too dangerous. I'm not going to Durham. Everybody dies in Durham. Okay. Wasn't going to Durham. I wanted the most dangerous hood in Raleigh. Okay. Mm-hmm. Raleigh danger and Durham danger are 2 different dangers.
Way different.
And so there was this guy that came up to me. He was an older man. He was like, what are you doing out here? Like, he was like, you can't be out here. This is too dangerous. And I was like, sir, at the time, my goal was to make $50,000 a year because I was a communication major, which, don't make no money in college. None. But $50,000 to me as a teen mom, that was like my thought of rich, right? Yeah. And so I was like, I got to make $200 a day. I can't leave the hood until I make $200 a day. And that would have counted to my goal of $1,000 a week. And he was like, you can't be out here. You got to go. And he was like, I'm just going to be your bodyguard. And I was like, cool, you can sit here with me. Do you know the next day I came out and there was yellow tape all around the hood and I'm setting up my book table and I'm like, who died today? And they was like, your bodyguard. And you know what I did?
What'd you do?
Kept setting up. And I was like, oh man, that's crazy. I kept setting up so strongly. Okay, my setup game was so strong, Shawn,
go hard.
that the News and Observer came over to me and the guy was like, hey, I know you see a yellow tape in a white sheet over this body, and you're still setting up. And I was like, yes, that's my bodyguard over there. And I still have to make $200 a day because I don't have a plan B. I don't have I can't go back to work. I can't go back to work a regular job. I got to sell these books and the hood is out. And he was like, I got to do a write-up on you. And he literally wrote me up. He did a write-up on me the day that man died.
Yo,
because he couldn't believe that I was out there selling books. So it was a very dangerous hood, as you can see.
Hey guys, so let me take a guess. You're enjoying the show. And if that's right, please make sure that you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast right now and tag me at Shawn R. Anthony _. I promise you this is going to help in amazing ways. And while you're at it, hit the 5-star rating and subscribe. With that being said, guys, let's get back to the show. Yeah. It sounds like it's almost on Durham level.
It was. Okay. And I was there during the summertime, so you already know it was lit.
Yeah, the summertime, they definitely out there in the summertime. So I want to ask you like a question that I know a lot of entrepreneurs are thinking right now, right? A lot of people got hit with this COVID-19. This is a game changer. I honestly believe it's going to separate the hustlers, the people who really do this, and the people who pretend to do this. What's your whole thoughts on, how has COVID-19 impacted just you? And then how do you see it impacting people in the future?
Yeah. So I think if I'm going to be very honest with you, I believe that all of my success in entrepreneurship came from God, right? With that being the case, I think one of the most interesting things about that is God tends to tell me things that are going to happen before they actually happen so that I can prepare for them. So Millions Conference, which is my yearly conference that I have. The last conference we had a little over 2,000 people there. And the theme of it was rich and recession. And so we spoke a lot about, hey, this time is getting ready to come. Everybody needs to prepare, right? That's the benefits of having God on your side, is that you might not be all knowing, but God is, and he will tell you these things. And so I think it's very interesting that this moment in time that we're seeing right now, I grieved last year, right? Like while people were celebrating, while people were excited, while people were like, no cares in the world, I'm like Noah, like the rain is coming, get on the boat. And nobody was listening. Oh, a few people listened. And so then when we got to this moment, it's almost like I was experiencing an extreme joy. And that's because my mind doesn't think in current moments. I'm already outside of the moment that we're in. With that being said, I was prepared for COVID, not just with masks, because I had bought tons of masks before this happened. Like, I was like, why am I buying all these masks? And then when it hit, I was like, oh God, it makes sense. I have so much hand sanitizer at my house. I bought all of this stuff before all of this happened. But not only that, in regards to business, there was already, last year when we watched the government shut down for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I knew it. I was like, and I watched people on my timeline saying that they didn't have money, that they were struggling. And I'm like, man, this is just a 3-week shutdown. And you like fell this hard. This is not going to be good for the account. Like this is going to be bad.
You ain't gonna make it.
And so I tried to get a lot of people to just focus and structure their businesses in a way that it wouldn't be impacted when something like this happened. And so when COVID hit initially, you know what I got to do? I got to selling. And even in March, it was like the first 5 days of March, I had made $175,000 in one of my businesses. And so I just made sure that I just put my head down and started to grind and started, because I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to get into the mix of how everybody else feels and like in their emotions. And we're like, this isn't a time to sell. This isn't a time to market. And it's like, there needs to be somebody that keeps the economy stimulated. And why not us? Yep. And not only that, I think we also get into the mindset that everybody is struggling right now. Everybody is failing right now. But there are those that are thriving, and I'm really focused and geared towards them. It's something that's so important to even realize that during times of famine or during times of recession, everybody doesn't fail or everybody doesn't fall. There are those that thrive during these times. Yep. And so looking back at the recession in 2008, and all of these $1 million businesses that were born during those times, I was like, well, God, let me know what I need to do 10 years, 12 years later to thrive when something like this happens again. And so I'm always in a thriving mentality, trying to figure out what I can create or what I can produce, being a solutionist during a time like this that's going to help me thrive. So I think that one of the things that's important for us to do as entrepreneurs is to completely turn off the news. Like, it doesn't benefit anybody. And believe it or not, they're guessing as much as we are.
Yep.
Right. And so you're watching bad guesses all the time that are killing everybody. Stay off the news and just start asking God, what can I do to produce that's going to help me to thrive in this season, me and my family to thrive and not just survive and fail and fall into the trap of emotionalism and what everybody else is going through. I think it's so important for us to position ourselves in a certain way that we're not falling in quicksand.
Hey, that's deep and that's real. I think you gotta shut down the noise. You know what I'm noticing is that the people who are really succeeding right now, like I'm seeing the most downloads I've ever seen ever because people are at home, they're listening, they're trying to brand themselves, they're trying to get better, right? The people that are really thriving right now are people who grew up with the struggle. So to take away certain things, we never had some of those things. So who cares? Like you're gonna stop me from going there? That's all right. Never had it.
Exactly. Okay. Because when you started from the bottom, you like, let me give you a bologna sandwich.
Hey,
I don't need no.
I got a craving for red links. It's a different type of mentality. So you're not really that bothered by it. But the people who are struggling are the people who are counting on these things. You're also seeing, and this is what I really want to talk about too. You're seeing people either be very good at something they never tried before, or you're seeing people who are struggling to do things they should have already learned. And one of those things that I'm really noticing is you see all these different huge church organizations and groups, right? They got the biggest, best church. They got the $100 line. They got all these things going on. But right now, when this thing hit, they didn't even know how to press record. They didn't know how to go live.
Oh, it's awful. I'm watching it as case study. It's awful. And, you know, one thing in the Bible, it talks about having, they're called children of Issachar in the Bible. And these children in the Bible were able to discern the times and the seasons that we were in, right? Nothing caught them off guard because they were able to sense, okay, the time is shifting. The seasons are shifting. We need to shift with it before we're left behind. And what I'm realizing is that people that are kind of in religion and not really relationship with God don't really have that anointing or don't have that keen sense of discerning when times or seasons are being able to shift. And so you find that people are being left behind, if you will, in old systems that don't work anymore. But it's almost like they're being exposed to showing us that these are people that are in buildings that might have been teaching things that don't work anymore. Yeah. And so I think what we're watching is really beautiful. And it's really a detox if you think about it, because what does a detox do? It normally makes your face break out. It normally brings up to the top things that need to be like when you detox, they call it like a healthy. What do they call it? A health crisis. Because sometimes your face breaks out. Sometimes your bowels go crazy. And you don't feel good at first, but it's really just getting out all the gook out of you so that it can start the process. And I think that's what we're seeing in the church is we're seeing a health crisis where we're detoxing things and people out that needed to be detoxed out a long time ago. And God is bringing the other people up to the forefront. Man, that's what's going on. Yeah,
that's so real. I'm glad you said that because I mean, you're in a space, right? You know what's happening, and I think that's important that people are grasping that. What advice would you give somebody right now who's struggling right now to adapt to the change?
I would say you have to jump in head first and feet first, and I would say you cannot be a voyeur on everybody's life looking on social media. You have to log off of social media. One thing I've noticed with people who feel like they're being left behind and they don't know how to adapt to change is that they think that the best next thing to do is to get on social media, scroll, see what everybody else is doing. And what you end up doing is being like them. And so I think it's important to log out and say, how can I create this? And you might not feel creative because you haven't been creative in a long time, but that doesn't mean you should go and copy what somebody else is doing. Mm-hmm. Log out. Stop being a voyeur in everybody else's life. Stop comparing you know what happened to me one day? My son, when he was like 4 or 5, I was chasing him out in the yard and he was running like really fast. And do you know what happened? He looked back at me. And as soon as he looked back at me, he fell on his face. And it was like God gave me such a big revelation in saying that this is what his people were doing. They were running really fast and they were gaining traction. And like he was running fast. But the second somebody stops to look back to see what somebody else is doing, that's the second they fall on their face. Maybe not literally, but figuratively. And they fall behind because then you start comparing yourself. So this is not a time to be looking back to see if somebody's caught up with you. This is the time to literally just tunnel vision, put on some blinders like horses have. Do not look to the left or the right, but keep going forward. And you cannot copy what somebody else is doing or compare or compete. Like, you're running your own race. So get to it. Chop, chop.
Ooh, flames. I think, and it's so real. And it's those small things that we're able to notice, to put together, that truly tells us the best stories in life. I want to ask you the question that we've asked, Tiphani, everybody who's ever hopped on this podcast. And that is, if you were that college student, right? That former college student, let's say, you didn't graduate, or perhaps, you got the degree, feeling good, and you're wondering the question of the podcast, school's over, now what? What advice would Tiphani Montgomery give?
The next school you need to enroll in is School of the Hard Knocks. Okay. Congratulations for getting a college degree. It's not going to help you in the real world. And so I would say to you, get to work doing what it is that you want to do. And I would also say that it's easier than you think it is. And one of the quotes, somebody asked me, like, what quote have I kind of lived by as an entrepreneur? And Jay-Z said something maybe 10 years ago that stuck with me through really my journey as an entrepreneur. And he said, don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. And I thought that was so profound, because I have met people that would say to me, you can't be a bestseller a month after your book comes out. Like, do you know how many people have been writing books for 6 years and they're not bestsellers, that you have to wait your turn? And just imagine taking somebody's advice, telling me that I needed to wait my turn. That's insane, right? And so then that quote comes into mind, don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. Because I was able to ignore that. I was able to become a best-selling author, Essence Magazine best-selling author a month later. Also, check this. There was a time where I wanted to be a speaker, and Bloomberg Business Week reached out to me, and they were like, hey, we want you to speak, but we want you to speak in Portugal, right? That's in Europe. I did not have a passport. And you know what I said to them? Of course. Yeah, I'll speak. Give me my flight. I'll be there. Call the passport office. They were like, yeah, you don't have a passport. You're not going to make it. And I was like, oh, no. Bloomberg Business Week called. I got to make it. It's my first speaking engagement. It's got to do. And do you know what I did?
What you did?
I told them, I'm in North Carolina. I said, book my flight in Washington, D.C. That's what I told them to do. You want to know why?
Why?
Because the day of my flight, I told them to book the last flight out, like 8:00 at night. The day of my flight, I drove to Washington, D.C. I was the first person in line at the passport office. I was the first person in that day. And I said, I have a flight at 8:00 at night. Showed them my ticket. Do you know who got a passport that day?
You did.
Filed for it and received a passport on the same day.
That's crazy.
That's insane. Don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. Do you know what happened when I first started my online business and was selling? The first high charge that I ever had was $97, which in my mind back then was super high. Somebody said, you can't charge that. Only lawyers and doctors charge that. The course ended up selling out. Don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. You know what I'm saying? They said to me when I first had my Millions conference in Chicago in January, you can't have it in January. It's gonna be canceled because January, it's going to snow out. You don't understand. Chicago is the worst in January. They're going to cancel all the flights. I went to God and I said, God, I believe you told me to have this conference in January in Chicago. I pray for unseasonably warm temperatures. When we heard the news, the newscaster said it hasn't been this warm in over 20 years. Don't listen to anybody. Everybody's scared. And so that's what I would say.
Oh my goodness. And you torched that. What's crazy is that Jay-Z also has one of my favorite quotes of all time, and it says, remind yourself, nobody built like you. You design yourself. So take your advice, guys. This has been an amazing episode. Tiphani, I appreciate you right now. People their mouth is probably dropped for the gems you laid on us today, but let people know where they can find you, where they can hear more about you.
Yeah, so my name is spelled Tiphani. Make sure you go and follow me over on Instagram. I have a great time over there. So follow me at Tiphani Montgomery over on Instagram. And I spell it again, Tiphani. So I can't wait to connect with you guys over at Instagram.
Guys, always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Yo, what you think? I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I want to know what you learned. So if you wouldn't mind, would you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast on your phone right now? Upload to your Instagram stories, tag me at Shawn R. Anthony _, and then let me know in that Instagram story what is one thing that you learned. I love hearing from you, my listeners, thought leaders, former or current students all around the world. Let me know, and while you're doing this, go inside the podcast app, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and a 5-star rating. Again, this helps us reach more people. And if you want to be a part of this mission, helping us change the world one person at a time, it makes a massive difference by you leaving a review. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week. And remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.